1805, just 2 years after Ohio became a state, this small little town in east central Ohio was established. It's called Granville. The drive out here from where I was staying is absolutely beautiful. It's fall time, leaves are just changing, a lot of yellows and reds in the scenery, and so far as I can tell, this little town full of foliage is really cool. I'm enjoying it already. There's like little shops and things going on. There's a little market down the street here that we're gonna go check out, but I wanna go check out the Historical Society Museum here first and see what the history of the place is. I really don't know anything about Granville. I grew up around this part of the world, but never came out here. So here we are. Let's learn some things. The Historical Museum is right over across the street. Right here by this giant bell that I'm sure has historical significance is the Granville site map. It explains a little history about the town layout and why it was chosen to be right here. On the other side of the same sign explains how in 1804 a group of neighbors in Granville, Massachusetts and Cranby, Connecticut formed the Licking Company, and this is how it all came to be. They were inspired by another local community, Worthington, that formed just a year prior. There is a historical marker right here that talks about this 100-year-old Opera House, but I learned a lot from that very kind gal in the background there, Lynn. Lynn's out here taking care of this beautiful little, what I thought was just a park, but she told me a lot of history. I talked to her for like 20 minutes about the town, the history. She told me all kinds of stuff, including that the Opera House that used to sit here for 100 years burnt down. She was a firefighter back in 1982 or 3 when that burned. She was telling me that this building was so big, it was a main hub of stuff happening here in the community. It was about as big as this church over here on the corner. Let's see, it's a pretty big building. They had movies they would show in the upstairs, and famous speeches happened on the front steps. They had big front steps that went up, but now it's been raised, and then we have this nice little park with some history. I haven't even made it to the History Center, and I've learned so much already. Thank you, Lynn, if you're watching this video. Very kind. She said that the Opera House used to sit over here with this, you can't hardly see it through the trees, but there's a big church over here. There's a church there, one on each corner of the street, in fact. But it used to sit there, and then they rolled it over here in the early 1800s with horses and logs. It took up this whole corner. Right next to this church was an alleyway that separated the Opera House and the church. And the priority of the fire department was to save this building because this one was already on its way down. The fire started because someone had been raising little baby chicks, and they put a heat lamp over top of some straw in the chick's bed and caught a fire, burned the place down. Apparently this church across the street where the Opera House used to sit was a hot spot for Pokemon players back in the day. Maybe still is. I don't know. Is that game still happening? I had some friends that played Pokemon a lot. You used to always see them like walking around looking at their phone and stuff. It was interesting to me. I never played the game. Do you play? Does anyone out there play Pokemon? Is that actually still a thing? It's a nice looking downtown, eh? I like that there's so many historical markers here. We finally made it to the Historical Society here, and I got distracted by the sign. It's talking about the Alexandrian Society that started a bank here. I don't know what the Alexandrian Society is, but they started a bank and they printed their own money here. It went defunct in 1837, and then it became a post office and a store and some other things. And the founder of the Alexandrian Society Bank built this building from local stone. So, nice looking little building. Here out front is some information on an Indian mound that is located here in town. We'll see that later.
They started producing a lot of whiskey here because it was cheaper to export whiskey than grain and easier. Oh. But you can see in 1820 they produced 97,000 gallons and exported just 30,000.
Wow.
So they drank a lot here.
It's an old shoe.
Okay, so the population of Granville, Massachusetts was 2,309. So it was larger than Springfield at that point. point. The soil was poor, and half of the population was under the age of 16, and there was no good farmland to pass on, so people left. By 1810, the population was 1,500, and now it's like less than 1,000.
Look at the size of this planer. My goodness, I've never seen one that big. Interesting display of old cameras. I do like old cameras, especially these. Oh, look at that tiny camera there. The Bell. Yeah, remember the old flash cubes? That was neat. This local lady, O.C. Robinson, had this interesting kitchen in her Victorian style house. It was all modern at the time. She entertained a lot, and this was what it looked like. She had a table here. See, there was a booth in the picture that I saw, but this was a representation of her little kitchen. Back in my day, you didn't have to dial the area code every time. You just had to dial the 7 numbers of your friend's telephone that you hopefully remembered. I still remember some of my friends' telephone numbers. I definitely remember my telephone number growing up. Do you remember that stuff? Here's some pictures from her kitchen. That was the table in the booth that I was seeing, remembering from the photo out front. Back before air conditioning, these little fans were the way to go. A lot of businesses used them to advertise on. I remember having them at my church when I was a kid. And some fancy ones here, a collapsible one. Here we have some local threads. This was a outfit worn by, it looks like, some swimmers. Yep. No thanks. It's neat to see this old clothing. Look how tiny those shoes are. Good grief. Last part of the exhibit is some books about the area. And postcards. Okay, the last part of the exhibit. It's a secret location. It's in there here in the bathroom. So this is probably the only time I'm ever going to show you anything in a bathroom. But it's the picture of the Operahouse, the only picture that they have here. From their bicentennial celebrations, all these historical buildings. And right here is what the Operahouse looked like. And that's where the bell came from. It used to ring on the hour, every hour during the day. Not the nighttime, because that would wake people up. But it did ring during fires, and I think one other occasion, when somebody important died, they would ring that bell. In fact, the first time that bell was ever rung was to recognize the death of somebody important here in town. So now you know. Oh, it's an interesting vehicle. An art car. A phone booth. Huh. Not just any phone booth. I think this is a special phone booth. There's no quarter slot. There's nothing here. So let's see what happens. There was a positive message being said over the phone. I tried to put my phone up to it so you could hear it, but it didn't work out. I can't quite remember what it was. It's very nice. Thank you. Telephone. Other people are trying it now. Granville Village Hall. If you didn't know, a village versus a town and a city, a village is 5,000 people or less. I grew up in a village of West Jefferson, Ohio, which I think became a township at some point within the last 10 years since I've not lived there. But I grew up in a town with less than 5,000 people. So that's how I know. Now you know. Love these old buildings. I think this is the library, since there's a statue of people reading a book. There's another museum in this small town, the Robbins Hunter Museum. I'm not sure what the subject matter is of this, but looks pretty neat. Unfortunately, the museum is closed at this moment, so we will not be able to go into the museum, but it looks pretty neat. You see back here is a little shed with a couple chairs out front. Nice little porches and stuff. I love this little town, it's cool. Houses like this is a lot like the house I grew up in. Brick, old, historical. But earlier today, Lynn, my friend from the park, told me about the Buxton Inn. It's one of the oldest operating inns in the state of Ohio. Let's see if we can check it out. The old original fireplace, the ghost stories. I'm not going to tell you any of that right now because I'm going to come back here. I'm going to be staying in the haunted room number 9 in just a few weeks. So let's move on through Granville and see what else is shaking. Not sure what's going on here. Nice. Love seeing that Ohio flag. Granville Inn. It's like a stately place. Apparently they have a restaurant over here, maybe a bar, obviously a hotel or an inn. A lot of stuff like this around town. Old-timey, historical Ohio type of places. It's a nice town just to walk around in. Just a beautiful little Americana town. The Huntington Bank. I used to work at Huntington Bank as a banker many years ago. Nice looking branch. I don't know if I've ever told you all that I was in banking. I was in a lot of different jobs. I tried my hand at several things: lifeguarding, banking. I had an inflatable rental business for quite a while, landscaping, kite flying. I should add up all the jobs that I've ever had that I can remember and find a number for that, my job count. Okay, all right. I'm passing by the intersection where there is a church on every corner of the intersection. Well, mine is right there where the Operahouse used to be, but there's a church right next to it. Today is a pseudo Parents Weekend at Denison University, which is right here at the end of the street. So there's a lot of people crawling around the streets here today. In a small town, there's a lot of traffic. It was slow going on the way in. Denison University, a lot of history here. Okay, friends, I've decided that I'm going to be coming back here. The next video that you see will be from Granville again. Be ready for that, friends. I appreciate you joining me today here in Granville, but it's not over. I'll see you in the next video from the same town to show you more great stuff. We're going to be staying in the Buxton Inn in room 9. That's haunted as it can be, so they say. Thanks for joining me today, friends, in Granville, Ohio. I'll see you in the next video.